The Somalis by 1880s, 1870s actually, were wearing a lot of American-made clothes. And that's something that is mentioned by one Frank Linsly James, who traveled the lands of the Somalis in 1880s. And actually, he's surprised about it, and he complains a lot in this article about that because he's wondering why the British are not doing as much commerce with the Somalis as the Americans were doing. And this came to me as a surprise, actually, because I did not expect that by 1880s, 1870s, 1880s, that the Somalis were buying a lot of products from the Americans. And we're going to read the part where Frank Linsley talks about this issue of the Somalis buying a lot of products from the Americans. And this is what he says. Before closing, I should like to say a word as to the commerce of the country. And here he's talking about the country of the Somalis. And I have to point out that Frank traveled all the way to the Ogaden. He went as far into the lands of the Somalis, to the Ogaden, to the Shebele River. He really traveled further into the lands of the Somalis. He continues, of the amount of that commerce I will not speak, as that may be accurately determined by reading the official reports published by the Aden authorities. Of course, during this time, Aden was like the headquarters of the British authority in what we can call the Horn of Africa, even though, of course, Aden is not in the Horn of Africa, but you get what I mean. That was the place where they used to settle and then travel to the Horn of Africa and maybe to India, or mostly to India as well. He continues, but what I wish particularly to draw attention to is the fact that small quantity of English goods enter the country. So the very small amount of British products did go into the lands of the Somalis, especially like Ogaden, very interior places. He found that very little of the British items reached there, but he was surprised that the items from America were there, and that was surprising to him. It is surprising to me to read this actually. He continues, all the cotton cloth, with but a few exceptions, is of American or Indian make, and the only English cloth I took was taken on account of its rarity as presents for chiefs. So the majority of the clothes he found there were mostly American and Indian. And he says he may carry the British cloth, and those were taken because they were very rare, and then they were taken to the chiefs as present because they were very rare, meaning there were very rare British clothes that were found in the lands of the Somalis. He continues, natives of India have for generations lived at Berbera and supplies the traders from the interior with goods. This no doubt accounts for the Indian clothes so largely used. So he says for a very long time, and actually many of the documents I've read from 18th, from 19th century especially, which talk about Berbera and Zaila, there's a lot of mention of Indian traders. Indian traders used to come to the Berbera trade fair annually. They call them the Banyans. They were a huge part of that trade fair. They will bring products, then they will buy stuff from the Somalis and take back to India. So that had gone on for a very long time, for hundreds of years. So that explained why you will find so many clothes made from India in the interior of Somalia, because the Somali traders will go to the coast, the trade fair, buy these clothes, and then, of course, move with them into the interior and sell them. Then he says, but why is the American clothes so common there? Now, that's the big question he asks. Why were the American clothes so common in the interior? Places like the Ogaden, very interior places. And even me, I was wondering, the US is far away, but somehow they did manage to get their clothes into the lands of the Somalis, or the Somalis somehow managed to get the American clothes into their country and sell them to their people, so that they were so common in 1870s, 1880s. And we are talking here close to 130, close to 140 years. It's a long time. And he goes on to complain, of course, that the British government needs to do more. Maybe he's thinking the British need to sell more than the Americans, or he's thinking the British have been involved with the Somalis for a very long time, longer, of course, at least, as compared to the Americans, who did not come to that land actually somehow, but some of their products did find their way into the lands of the Somalis. This article is one of the articles in the book The Somalis and Their Lands, and this book contains a collection of articles that were published by the Journal Geographical Society of London between 1830 and 1890. These are very interesting articles that give us a glimpse into what was happening just before the lands of the Somalis were colonized and the travels that were made. And of course, some of these travels were basically intelligence collecting campaigns, we can say basically. If you want to get this book, you can check the pinned comment, check the description box. If you are watching on TikTok, check the bio. You can find a link there that will take you to where you can buy the book. Those are my random thoughts.